Confidential File. A report by Paul Coates, one of the nation's distinguished news reporters, brings you a factual report on America today, its people and their lives.
How much deduction did you claim for charity on your last income tax report? Why? Well, because a large portion of charity donations in the United States go not into help for the needy, but into the pockets of smooth-tongued con men whose nearest approach to charity is buying a drink for the blonde at the end of the bar. Tonight I'm going to show you the phony charity boiler room, what it looks like, how it works, and how to save your money for legitimate causes where it'll be put to good use. Exactly how much the fake charity rackets cost you each year, but unfortunately the operators tend to be rather lax about their own income tax reports. Best estimates run between $75 and $100 million annually. One thing is sure, it's a lot of money that's sorely needed elsewhere. So you don't solve the problem by simply saying no every time you're asked to contribute to a charity. You have to find out which ones are honest and which aren't, and that's not always easy. Let's take a look at a couple of men who know a great deal about the charity business. They're on duty and they're waiting for a call. Here it is now. When people go to the trouble of using a radio to transmit instructions, they're usually pretty important instructions. And certainly they're driving like it's important. This is the place. One man covers the radio while the other goes in, but of course the outside man is right there if he's needed. He's asking to see the owner of the place, Mr. Budlow. It's important and it's personal. I don't know if you've figured out who these radio patrolmen are yet, but they're not policemen, quite the opposite. They're collectors, charity collectors. Mr. Budlow got a phone call about 20 minutes ago. It was made in the name of a local veterans post, and it was a request for a little donation. Well, not exactly a donation, but a goodwill ad in the Veterans magazine. Mr. Budlow didn't exactly say no, and to a charity solicitor, when you don't say no, it means yes. So here they are. Now, if Mr. Budlow will just make out his check for $50, he'll be given a receipt in the everlasting goodwill of the veterans. This is all pretty sudden to Mr. Budlow. He's not a rich man, and all he told the guy on the phone was that he'd think it over. Wouldn't $25 be okay? Sorry, Mr. Budlow, we've already reserved the ad space for you, and that would mean we'd lose $25. You see, we have you down for $50. So what's a guy gonna do? Mr. Budlow isn't too happy about the whole thing, and I'm not surprised. He's probably been hit 4 or 5 times during the past year on similar charities, and to a small businessman, that mounts up. The collector got $50 in 5 minutes. Let's see where he gets his leads. This is a boiler room, the trade name for the headquarters of the telephone pitchmen. And these are the angels of mercy, unceasingly dedicated to their labor of love. Love of money, that is. This crew will collect thousands of dollars in a day. Of those thousands, perhaps a couple of hundred will eventually trickle down to the organizations they were intended for. You know that phone call Mr. Budlow got? Here's the guy he talked to, or rather who talked to him. Like to hear his pitch?
Hello, Mr. Abernathy. This is Captain Elliott calling from the Korean Veterans Association. Yes, we publish the Veterans Dispatch. You know, it's for the benefit of the disabled veterans. Well, the reason I'm calling you, Mr. Abernathy, is because I'm sure a man like yourself is aware of the fact that we got to provide for these boys who gave so much for us. Now, I know about your fine reputation in the community, and I'm sure you'll be one of the first to want to help our boys. Well, you can do that, Mr. Abernathy, by placing a $50 ad in our Veterans Dispatch. Well, now, wait a minute. I am talking to Arthur T. Abernathy, am I not? Well, that's why we called you in the first place. Oh, now, wait a minute, Mr. Abernathy. When men like you don't support the vets, well, you're not free from criticism, you know. And I'm sure that our organization won't forget this attitude. What's that? How much? $15? Well, I'll tell you what. For $25, I'll still call you an American. All right, Mr. Abernathy.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mr. Halson. Your ad will be in the next issue of the Republican Journal. Uh-huh. And I'm sure our publication will do a lot of good and get the facts to Republican members. Yes, sir. That's the purpose of the United Republican Committee. We'll send a boy over to pick up the check. Thank you. Get that to the boss. Hello? Can I speak with Joe Hawley? That's right, Joe Hawley. Mr. Hawley, this is John Appleton. I'm on the board of the United Democratic Committee. We're contacting all the leaders, Joe, of the Democratic Party here in town. Yeah, we're coming out with a publication to get the facts to all the good Democrats like yourself. That's right, Joe. Every important Democrat in town. And we won't forget this, Joe, because you've been mighty.
Say, Mr. Brown, this is Clancy from the Union Hall. How are you? I know how interested you are in labor, Mr. Brown, so I thought I'd call to let you know that our paper, the Labor's Watchdog, is going to press next month. Oh, no, Mr. Brown. Huh? This ain't no sales pitch. I just thought you might be interested in getting the trade from over 1 million members in this community. Uh-huh. Oh, absolutely not, Mr. Brown. This ain't no contribution. Look, for $100, we can give you a nice quarter-page ad in the paper, huh? I see. Well, look, how about a very valuable 3-inch ad for only $35? How's that? Well, if that's the way you feel about it, just forget it. But the boys won't. Huh? Well, I see. Yeah, sure. Okay, then. The $35 ad. Uh-huh. That's right. And you'll get your money's worth, Mr. Brown. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Just wondering how things are over there at your side of town. Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah. I tell you, Mr. Thompson, the reason I called is that we're coming out with our new edition of the American Policeman next month, and, of course, we thought about you right away. Uh-huh. I tell you what, Mr. Thompson, we were thinking of putting you down for a $50 ad, okay? Yeah, well, that's not very much, and besides, it's a little like buying insurance, you know what I mean? Well, I mean, if anything ever goes wrong out there, just show one of the boys your ad in the American Policeman, and he'll take good care of you. Yeah, for $50 you can't go wrong, Mr. Thompson. Okay? Good. As a matter of fact, Sergeant Davis...
No. No, it isn't that. I'm sure you're a perfect gentleman. But I just can't get away until I sell my quota. I am just a poor working girl, you know. Only $150. Gee, I bet you spend 10 times that much on advertising every month. Fine, Mr. Cole. You're an angel. I'll put you down for $150. And you call me back at 6, okay, sweetie? Yes, do you know the number? That's Lawndale, 2331. That's right.
May I have your name, please?
Dick Westerman. Your age? 39.
And your occupation, Mr. Weston?
Employment agency owner.
Have you had experience with boiler room pitchmen?
Recently, I worked in them for 6 months.
And would you tell us about that? How did that come about?
Well, I was investigating 10 of them for a businessmen's bureau here in Los Angeles.
Wasn't it hard to get boiler room jobs?
Not particularly if you've had experience.
Mm-hmm.
I worked on several papers in classified phone sales, and a man who can promise stability is a pretty good thing for a boiler room.
Well, why is that?
There's about 100% turnover a month in the average boiler room due to alcoholism.
And what's alcoholism got to do with being a boiler room pitchman?
Well, it's the tremendous amount of pressure that's put on the individual itself. You're in the little cubicle. You've got a desk, usually a card table, a chair, a mooch list, and yourself, and you're giving the same pitch all day long.
Sounds like pretty rotten working conditions. Why would a guy want to be a boiler room pitchman?
Well, the money in it solely.
What is the money?
A good man should make from $200 to $500 a week.
Doesn't charity get any of that money?
Sometimes in the case of what we call the strictly legitimate type.
And what is the strictly legitimate type?
Well, the legal boiler room operator usually goes to a veteran's post, club, or lodge and gives them $200 to $300 for the use of their name.
And what makes it unethical to do that?
Well, it's the idea that the organization is sicking the boiler room on the whole community for a measly $200 or $300.
And after they've paid that $200 or $300, the boiler room operator can go ahead and collect as many thousands as he's able. Is that right?
Sometimes as much as $15,000 or $20,000.
Is the charity that sells its name in that way acting unethically, do you believe?
No, not unethically. It's merely stupidity. They are taking a certain small sum of money and more or less letting the boiler room boss work the community for sometimes thousands of dollars that could have gone to charity.
And most of them don't realize how much charity money is lost that way.
No, they don't. It's a vast amount.
I suppose the boiler room men concentrate on big business executives when they solicit, don't they?
No, they don't. It's the little guy that pays.
Well, how does that work?
Well, the big boys are usually pretty smart. You'll find the 25, 50, and then the $10 and $5 pitches are about the most successful.
Don't a lot of people promise money and then not actually deliver?
No, the boss never takes a chance on that. He has skilled collectors in the field. If it's the case of a veterans organization, there's a man in a veterans cap, Legionnaire's cap, go out. Or if it's in the case of a police pitch, they hire actual policemen to go out and do the collecting.
Off-duty policemen, you mean?
Yes. Two-way radio system, shortwave, is very frequently used. They'll let the message get out immediately upon receiving the ad, and sometimes even within 4 or 5 minutes, the mooch, as he is called, is contacted by the collector.
What kind of a person is this pitchman?
The moocher, the pitchman, is an individual, let's say he's a family man, 47 to 55 years old, usually an alcoholic, but he's a man who is rather nervous, chain smoker, and usually a heavy drinker.
How can a person tell the difference between an ethical charity setup and a boiler room racket?
Well, I would say it's just exactly this. We know that there are certainly a lot of good charities. The Community Chest, the Red Cross, the Cancer Fund, and generally they make a personal approach. They have their own local drive, their own local chairman. I've never known, there could be some, but I've never known of any bona fide charity making a phone solicitation.
Well, what would you recommend to anybody looking in tonight to do in case they are solicited by telephone and they want to check on the charity?
Number one, check with the Better Business Bureau. Number two, phone their Chamber of Commerce, because if their lethargy allows that call to go by undetected, before someone does phone, perhaps that pitch room has taken the community for $7,000 or $8,000.
Now, don't you think it might be a good protection, too, to demand of anybody who calls you for a solicitation that they send you a letter?
Yes, I think a letter is a wonderful idea, because if they mail a letter stating their cause, and it is an unethical or illegitimate cause, then they're using the United States mails to defraud.
And I guess they don't want to take chances like that, do they?
I don't believe they do.
How do the pitchmen know who to telephone?
Well, there are certain mooch lists made up of the names of individuals who have given to certain causes.
Where do they get the names from?
They get the names from little organs, goodwill organs, of churches, of groups, clubs, and so forth and so on, where a man will put a card in a club program. And they pick those up one by one, and then they gradually fall into the hands of the room A room makes a sale, and immediately he sends out, the boss, 21 or 22 cars to all the other members of the syndicate.
Well, what information is on a mooch list?
Well, if I were to look at a mooch card, I would say something. It would say something like this: Johnson Foundry, Kimball 2485, Pop Johnson. That means that Pop is the man to contact. Then it would say V3. That would mean that he had gone for 3 veterans deals. P, no, meaning police, no. And then on the next it would say UN 3, Union 3. I'd know that I should contact him for either a veterans or a union. I would call the man, say, hello, Pop. That's it.
The most popular pitch.
Well, we can't profiteer on antagonism. We're no longer at war. So we must profiteer on sympathy. The Purple Heart or Wounded Veteran pitch is perhaps the best.
I have here a program of goodwill ads such as you described. Do you think you could pick a name out of this book and call him up and make a pitch to him to show us how the pitchman operates?
I believe I could.
Good. Can I have the phones we hooked up here? About how this experiment will come out. The other day I had Mr. Westerman run a test in my office, and in 45 minutes he collected over $60. All right, swell. Thank you. You can get a dial tone.
Okay. Yes, can I speak to the manager? Who would that be? Yes, Walt. Could I speak to him, please? Hello, Walt. This is Chaplain Hagan at the Purple Hearter, official organ of Purple Heart veterans here in Southern California. Yes. And the reason I wanted to call you is about a year or so you helped the boys out. And it's a little ad in our organ. And we just wondered if you'd like to go for another $25 spot in there with your card. Well, I'll tell you, I know it's a hard time of the year, but nevertheless, there's no provision for those boys, paraplegics, with no future that are living out at Sawtell, Norco, Birmingham. Those boys fought for a fuller and more abundant life, Mr. Clover, and we just thought you'd like to do something to make their life just a wee bit happier. Well, I'll tell you, the Purple Hearter doesn't mail any literature. It's either given from the depth of your heart, Mr. Glover, or else it isn't given at all. I feel that asking you to give $25 for these boys who fought for your security, who fought for freedom, who fought for a better way of life for America, is asking a small pittance. And I do wish you could go along with this because our path is so hard. We have to keep that torch of freedom burning. Wouldn't you go for, let's say, just one spot and help us? Well, yes, I believe it would. If you could make it 15, it'd be a little smaller ad, but that would entitle you to 3 lines. And we'll have that in our next edition, and all I can say, Mr. Glover, is God bless you. And by the way, would you have that check made out to the Purple Hearter? You don't send it. One of our boys from the Legion will pick that up. And could you have that out where the girl will have it, the receptionist say, and we'll have a man down this afternoon? Well, that's just wonderful, and may God bless you, Mr. Glover. Thanks a million. That's okay. Okie doke. Thank you.
That's fascinating. That's a very interesting thing to hear. You got $15 from him.
That's right. That happens every day.
You called yourself Reverend somebody?
Chaplain.
Chaplain. I think perhaps a lot of people looking in learned a good lesson from it. I want to thank you very much for your cooperation tonight. You know that lady you saw in the film a few minutes ago? She's called a Black Widow, and every good-sized boiler room has one. They have a selling device that just can't be beat. A sexy voice. May I have your name, please?
I work under the name of Diana Lee.
And your age?
35.
Your occupation, Miss Lee?
I sell phone pitches.
Legitimate or otherwise?
Well, I do both.
Which type do you like the best?
Well, there's more money in the otherwise.
What kind of charity pitches have you done?
I specialize in veterans pitches.
How do you work a veterans pitch on the phone?
Well, I do them all the same. I sell it by sex.
How do you mean you sell it by sex?
Through my voice. I try to sound very impressed with whoever I'm talking with, and, well, you know, like I'm available.
I see. And what happens when they ask you for a date?
Oh, I usually accept to make sure I can get their money.
And then do you show up for the date?
Usually I don't.
But sometimes you do.
I do if I think they're holding out on me.
Do they usually come through after the date?
Yes, they usually do.
And what's the most profitable date you've ever had?
Well, once I came back with $400 in my purse.
Did you turn it in?
Yes, I did. That's one thing about this business. We're honest with each other, even though we aren't with the public.
Did you ever know where this money for the Veterans Charity was actually going?
Well, no, I never did actually know, but I don't think the veterans got very much of it.
Thanks very much. As I told you before, I listened to Mr. Westerman making some random phone calls to businessmen the other day. The take was $60 in 45 minutes. Poses an interesting question. Why are businessmen who are supposed to be pretty careful with a buck such easy marks for the phony charity pitchman? May I have your name, please?
Raymond Spitz,
And your age?
42.
And your occupation, Mr. Spitz?
I manage a dry cleaning store.
Do you receive telephone calls at your store from persons who ask you to donate to charity?
Yes, we do.
How many would you say you get in a month?
Oh, 4 or 5.
Would you speak up just a little bit? And how much money do they ask for usually?
Oh, anywhere from $5 to $7 and so.
Do you usually agree to contribute?
Not now.
Did you at one time?
Well, when we first opened up the store 4 years ago, why, we contributed about $200 in that year.
What made you stop giving?
Well, it seems our name got around and everybody was calling it.
And now you limit it just to the charities you feel you know about.
We just give to charities that we think are worthwhile.
When was the last time you were solicited by telephone?
Why, just 2 days ago.
And what phone call was that? What was it in regard to?
Well, that was regard to Purple Heart.
And did you agree to contribute some money at that time?
I did.
How much?
$5.
And the caller was Mr. Westerman, wasn't he?
Yes.
You didn't know that, of course, at the time.
I didn't know at the time.
Well, why did you give in, agree to give this $5?
Well, last year, one of the businessmen along the street there that I know called me up and told me to contribute towards this Purple Hearts Fund.
And you gave last year, too, then?
I did.
Have you gotten any other recent calls from people who said they represented veterans groups of any kind?
I did, just about 3/4 of an hour before I was called by you.
Is that so? They've really got you on a list, haven't they?
Oh, boy.
What did this man say to you?
Well, he was going to make, for a contribution, he was going to make me a rubber stamp, business stamp for the store.
And what was the contribution to go towards?
Purple Heart.
Oh, that was the same organization as Mr. Westerman called on?
Yeah.
What did you tell him?
Well, I told him to come around and see me. They were supposed to send one of their representatives around that following day.
And what happened when he did come to see you?
I haven't seen him yet.
Hasn't come in, huh? Tell me, Mr. Spitz, did you feel pretty foolish when we told you on the telephone that you'd just been tricked?
Well, I felt very foolish.
Well, let me assure you that you acted no differently from a number of other business people we called, including the beautician next door to you. You should have seen her face when my investigator accepted her cash donation and then returned it to her and told her to save it for real charity. Now, one more question. Do you think the experiment we conducted with you might do some good?
I think it'll do an awful lot of good.
As far as you personally are concerned?
Yes, sir.
And did it make you feel that perhaps these rackets rather are hurting the good charities?
Yes, they are, very much so.
And tell me how you feel they are.
Well, you just don't know whether you're contributing towards a good charity or one of these
phony rackets.
Just one of these racketeers, and you
Well,
just don't feel like giving to either one of them.
In other words, what you're saying is that it makes people who tend to be good-natured, people like yourself, suspicious of all charity.
That's true.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Spitz, and I'm sorry if we embarrassed you in any way. Thank you. Almost none of the legitimate charities resort to telephone solicitations. If you get such a call, tell them to send you a letter. If they send the letter and you're still suspicious, get in touch with a postal inspector. Elimination of phony charities will not only do a lot for the public's pocketbook, it'll mean more help for the people who really need help.